I want to shift gears from a bit of a market update and prediction to more of an industry update and prediction. As you heard from Sunshine while she was up here, I spend a lot of time in deep thought, a lot of intentional time in reflection. Obviously, a lot of time in airplanes, there's not a whole lot to do. In fact, I make it a goal as much as possible to not connect to the Wi-Fi and try to get things accomplished in deep silence by myself. And so while I'm doing that through weeks or months of time, I've compiled a list of things that I'm observing in the real estate industry as a producer, just like yourself. I think most of you know I'm still in the trenches with you. I'm still going on listing appointments and taking listings. I'm still working with buyers and having buyer consultations and negotiating offers. So I took into consider everything that I'm experiencing as a producer, as well as everything, of course, our team is experiencing. And if now today we've got hundreds of clients that share with us what they're experiencing as well. So I took all of those thoughts and I compiled them into a list that I'm going to share with you now. And my hope for this section is to not necessarily just say, hey, here's all my predictions. My hope for this section is, for most of them, not every single one, but for most of them, to be able to give you one or two nuggets or one or two pieces of information that you can go and do with it. Because what's the value of having thoughts and predictions if we don't have solutions? And so well, a lot of these are pretty simple and to the point, and those ones I don't necessarily have a solution for. As I get towards the end of the list, that's when I shift from more of predictions to more of solutions. So these are in no particular order. These are the predictions with solutions that I see for 2026. You already heard it. It's the first one that I have written down here without even that conversation. Interest rates will hover around 5.5% to 6% for most of the year. Now, Dr. Yoon didn't say this, but maybe to some degree he said this, but I firmly believe that if interest rates dip below 5%, we will see the frenzy that we saw 2-3 years ago. So it sounds like there's a few more cuts coming. I don't think that we're going to get below 5%, but it does sound like we're going to operate somewhere in the mid-5s by this time next year, by at least the middle of 2026. So that being said, if you have a buyer, it's likely that they're going to say to you, well, we heard, interest rates are now down below 6%. It sounds like they're coming down again. The Fed wants to do some rate cuts. Should we wait? Well, you heard from Dr. Yoon himself, and this would be the same thing that I would say, and that is absolutely not. Because if you wait, when they do go down, that frenzy will start. And if you're looking at, say, 5.5% in June or July, versus 6% today, but you're paying $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 more for the house, how much are you really saving? That's obviously a conversation that we've had several times in this room and from this stage. That's number one. Number two, those with 3 to 5% rates will move from the sidelines and into the game. However, those with current rates at 3 to 5% will move from the sidelines into the game. However, many of those will be upside down or breaking even. And that's a different conversation today than we've had to have over the last few years. That's not necessarily something we just cover with Dr. Yoon, but that is something that I'm experiencing with sellers who bought maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago at a lower rate. So being prepared to have the conversation of moving to another area so they can get a better lifestyle, remember that comes first before price. And so I had somebody ask me during one of our tour stops this season, Jeff, can you help us with articulating that? I'm going to do a little bit of that on Wednesday when I do a live. We're going to do a brand new listing appointment presentation from the stage. The listing presentation has been updated, as you know. Because we're in the trenches, we're updating it about every 18, 24 months. It has received an update, and you're going to see that demonstrated live. So I'm going to handle that one live. But what I can tell you right now, just in kind of a short clip or a short nugget, is you have to help the seller, especially in this case, understand when they're upside down or when the prices are flat or they're breaking even maybe, that buying and selling real estate is no different than buying and selling stocks. If you go back and look at how much, you would just ask the seller, this is your second home, your third home, which one is it? Oh, that's our third home, okay. And in the entirety of owning real estate, how much have you made? Oh gosh, probably a few $100,000. Okay, so this time you didn't make a few $100,000, but in total, the investment of real estate has made you a couple $100,000 a year. You have to help them understand that it's no different than owning mutual funds or having stocks. There's a value that's going to go up and down daily. Having that conversation with sellers is not a conversation that we had to have 3-5 years ago. It's one we do need to have today. Next, and this isn't necessarily something that we talked about with Dr. Yoon. Again, mine is more industry specific, as you will. And that is, I see that there is going to be inventory created because of AI replacing some jobs. All right, we're already seeing signs of that. Now, you could argue, well, that's going to be offset with other job creation, but we do see AI being able to replace roles in companies and organizations. Those job losses create inventory that helps balance out the overall real estate market. That's number 3. Job losses because of AI will create some more inventory for us. I have written down here, prices will remain relatively flat. Number 4, unless interest rates drop below 5%. We didn't really get an answer on the prediction of home values other than sales being up 14%, but I think what I heard in that is that the prediction is that home values are going to go back in the positive direction for most markets, not all. Next, I have written down that AI will become a lead generation tool in the real estate industry. I think I committed to you over the last 6 months that we were going to figure it out. To some degree, we have figured a lot out about AI and how to generate leads with it, and over the course of our 3.5 days together, you're going to be hearing ways to do that. AI will become a lead generation tool. We've experienced it. Next, I wrote down, database business will increase for agents who add more value. Database business will increase for agents who add more value and stop sending reminders to set the damn clocks back. Okay, I think this is probably the 30th time that I've said this, so hopefully by now you've stopped all those campaigns. Okay, nobody gets the value of your reminder to set the clocks back. I mean, honestly, when you get those from like your title company and your home inspector, do you just take out your cell phone? You know, I got one from my home inspector. His name's Tim. Well, actually, why don't you guys tell me if you did this? Okay, got the email from Tim about setting the clocks back. Hey, Tim, thank you so much for the reminder to set the clocks back. Had I not received this, I would have never known. I hope you are well. Thank you so much. Did anybody respond with those? Why are you still sending them? Okay. What is the real value? Good news is we're going to be covering all of our sources of business in detail tomorrow, so that way you know what value to add. Next, I have written down, business from social media will increase for agents who stop relying on platforms like Canva. Business from social media will increase for agents who stop using platforms like Canva and start following the formula we've been teaching you for years now. Okay, the pretty little images look great. They look professional. I get that. But they're not getting the result that you want. I know that. What gets the result? Real, raw footage. Real, raw photos. Real, raw videos. You talking. You in a raw photo situation with a client. Number 9. Or whatever number you're on. Number next. Okay? Well, I will say this. I'm going to get out of order because there's some things that Dr. Yoon said that were in my notes. And so it's like you don't need to hear it twice. So I'll just keep saying next. All right, that's how you know to go to the next number. I wrote down, AI will start replacing jobs causing layoffs. However, a stronger economy will make up for those jobs in other ways. AI will start replacing some jobs causing layoffs. We're already seeing a little bit of that. However, a strong economy will create jobs in other ways. So in other words, what I'm saying there is it's kind of a break even. It's kind of a balance. I did write down next to that, however, AI will make companies stronger, those that embrace it, obviously. Next, speaking of AI, something that I've been talking about specifically more so over the last 6 months heavily, and that is spoken word. Spoken word will be more trusted than written word by the end of this year. spoken word will be more trusted than written word by the end of this year. So what do I mean by that? Well, what that means is today, as you know, you can put anything you want on your website, in your blog, on social media. You can create a post, you can say anything. However, consumers and AI is recognizing that consumers trust spoken word, what you say, more so than what's written. They trust what you say more so than even reviews. Because you could grab all of your best clients and your clients could say all the amazing things about you. People, because of AI, are getting more critical about what they read and instead are more trusting of what they see and hear with their own two eyes. And so we're already seeing that AI is recognizing that and will be grabbing more of its data that it suggests to consumers when they're looking up what real estate agent that they should use or who they should reach out to. AI is already starting to do this, and I believe probably by this time next year, Gemini, some of you have heard me say this, I honestly believe that ChatGPT is going to be the next Yahoo. So let me explain what I mean by that. So first of all, Yahoo was amazing when they came to market. And they were the first to market, similar to ChatGPT is the first to market. And then Google came in and pounced on Yahoo. All right, show of hands if you had an @Yahoo email address at one time. Okay, I'm dating myself a little bit here. Yep, still do. Yeah, a lot of still do's in here. Okay, I believe what happened between Yahoo and Google is going to be the same thing that happens between ChatGPT and Gemini. Gemini is owned by Google. Google also owns YouTube. So those three combined, right, if you were just to draw a triangle, Google, Gemini, YouTube, those two are in cohorts and they are absolutely going to make sure that what is said in video gets to the forefront of anything related to AI search. So therefore, not a surprise that over the next 3.5 days, you'll hear us talk more about video strategies than maybe you have in the past, even though we've been trying to encourage you to do it for years. Spoken word will be more trusted than written word by the end of 2026. That means you have an opportunity as a real estate agent to spend more time getting spoken word out there. Well, why do I want spoken word out there? Well, because that's where the content is grabbed for AI to make its recommendation to suggest you as the go-to agent. Next, I wrote down underneath this, agents and leaders who master video content, that kind of go hand in hand with that last one. Agents and leaders who master video content will now be 18 months ahead of the competition. Think about it. I mean, I'm hearing of conferences today that they're just now starting to talk about video and using social media and video. It's amazing to me that we share something from our stage and 18 months later it's shared on another stage. We're already on to something else by then. So I know most of the Glover U clients, you've been following the copywriting formula. You've been doing what we've been teaching over the 18 months and you're ready to win with AI and video. And a lot of you have been doing it. I love seeing your stuff. I know you're paying attention. I know you're taking notes. I know you're following the formulas. And those of you that are just starting now to get into it, okay, it's going to take you some time to learn it and some time to master it, but you're still going to be ahead of the competition because most of your competitors aren't really going to embrace it for probably another 12 or 18 months. I used to say from this stage probably 5 years ago that agents who master video will have an unfair advantage over the competition. Probably 5 years ago, I'm sure there's some footage of me saying that it wasn't needed to be successful. You did not need to master video to be successful. You didn't have to master social media to be successful, but it would give you an edge. It would give you an unfair advantage. Today I'm saying, and don't get mad, it's a necessity. And why is it a necessity, Jeff? Because of the way consumers consume content today. The way consumers consume content today has caused it to become a necessity. Next, I wrote down, for sale by owners, will continue to be soft, and they are right now. If you have maybe held back from working for sale by owners in a while, I understand why that is. Because if you tried calling a for sale by owner 3 years ago, you heard this every day, every time. Are you kidding me? I got 14 people lined up to buy this house. I don't need you. You're going to be out of a job soon. Are you kidding me? You better find another industry, pal, because I don't need you. We got 3 other buyers that already wrote an offer on our house. Today, we call a for sale by owner today. By the way, I encourage you to maybe look at this source if you've put it on the back burner. We're going to talk about for sale by owners tomorrow and the techniques that we're using to win with them. You call a for sale by owner today, like clockwork. Hey Jeff, thanks for reaching out. Yeah, we still are going to try to get it sold on our own over the next couple weeks. But if we can't, then we would consider maybe using you in the spring if it's not sold by the spring. Hey Jeff, we're pretty confident. We've sold a few over the years, but we know the market's a little bit different today than it was over the last 5 years. So why don't you follow up with us in a month and we'll go from there. They're friendly again. They're open to talking to us again. So for those of you that kind of, moved away from for sale by owners over the year, first of all, I get it. I understand because I know how they were responding, but it's night and day today. So for sale by owners will continue to be soft, meaning easier to work. All right, that doesn't mean they're easy to work, but they're easier to work than we've seen over the last several years. And expired opportunities will still be prevalent. Expired opportunities will still be prevalent. It was probably 18 months ago, and I think I even said it in the opening video, where I encouraged everyone to start really taking that source seriously because we're about to enter a phase where we see more expireds. We saw more expireds in 2025 than we saw in the 5 years prior to that in every single market across the U.S. and in a lot of markets in Canada. More in 1 year than we saw in 5 years. Well, Jeff, I wasn't at this conference, so I didn't really work expires. I didn't know that I maybe should have went after that source. The good news is there's still going to be more of them. As you heard Dr. Yoon say, there's still going to be an increase in inventory, and we're still going to have sellers who are ridiculous with their expectations on their prices. So that never changes. So there will be plenty of expires for you to work. I can promise you that. Next. Again, this is more just kind of industry predictions and things. I believe we're going to see more mergers of companies both in and out of real estate who don't want to adapt or change or are looking for the easy button. I think we're going to see more mergers of companies, especially in real estate. In fact, it just happened like a week ago. There was a major one that took place. Don't want to adapt or change, so they're looking for the easy button. So let's just merge with someone who's already figured it out. Next. The value of the real estate agent will remain stable. Now, in 2024 and 2025, it actually increased. The value of a real estate agent to consumers in 24 and 25 actually increased. Now, I'm saying today it's going to remain stable. That means I don't think it's going to increase much more. I also don't think it's going to decrease. Why is that? Well, you just heard it. If we have even a 10% increase in sales and the market gets a little bit of a frenzy again, then our value actually declines. You understand, the hotter the market, the less value that we have to provide to the consumer. So while it's great to take notes, and I'm thinking 14% more sales, man, we're going to just increase all of our numbers by 14%. That's not necessarily the case. So I hope none of you in this room think when Dr. Yoon says, we're going to have a 14% increase in sales, that means that your sales are going to go up by 14%. No, here's what's going to happen. Those of you that actually play all in, those of you that actually follow the system are probably going to have a 20 or 25% increase in sales. And what's going to end up happening is we're going to have a lot of new agents enter the market, because whenever a market goes up, that's when we see a flurry of new agents enter the market. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's more to go around for everybody, especially if a bunch of new agents enter the market. So if we have a bunch of new agents enter the market and sales go up, it doesn't automatically mean that there's going to be more for you. You have to decide that there's going to be more for you. That's why we have a saying around here, you've heard it a million times, we make our own market around here. We don't care if it's up 14 or down 14. We know how many contacts we have to make, how many appointments we need to go on, how many contracts we need to get signed. So don't think because the prediction is that sales are going to increase that you're going to get your fair share of that. In fact, I would argue if you don't do anything different, you're not going to get any portion of that, because there's going to be enough new agents that enter the industry to take those away from you. Unless you make the decision, you're going to go get your unfair share. Next, agent count will see a slight increase because of the positive news about the market in the industry. Agent count will see a slight increase in 2026 because of the positive news, well, we'll just make this the next point. So instead, don't write the dots. We'll just go to the next point. Next point. So this would be like a however. It's tied to the last point, but it's a new point. Do what you want with that. Have the baby, somebody just said. I predict that we're going to see the largest wave of agents retiring over the next 18 months that we've seen in a long time. I know. Yes. Now, it's going to be offset by new agents getting in the business, so don't get too excited about that. So, by the way, there's a nugget in there, okay? Who in your market is a prominent name that you should be getting into a relationship right now? If companies are merging, why aren't agents merging? Why aren't teams merging? Obviously, you see teams merge. So I believe we're going to have the largest wave of real estate agents retiring that we've seen in a long time. By the way, the average age of a realtor today is 49. So therefore, if you look at your current company, okay, how many agents at your current company are over the age of 70 or 75? Because, Jeff, why are you predicting all of a sudden we're going to see this large wave of agents retire? Well, because I think two things are taking place. We have agents, older agents who have been resistant to social media, and then they're just kind of got on board, finally, okay, I can do this, I can have a Facebook account, I can have an Instagram account, I can learn how to share some things every now and again. And then all of a sudden, they got hit with, you got to create video too? Now I got to create video? Are you kidding me? And then, of course, as we've seen over the last year, AI. Now I have to learn AI? So wait a minute, I was just getting used to using the Facebook and Instagram and creating videos, and now you're telling me I have to somehow figure out how to use AI in my videos and generate leads with it? You know, I was kind of thinking of hanging this thing up anyways. Now might be a good time. I believe that you're going to see more agents retire in the next 18 months than you've seen probably in the last 5 years. So by the way, leaders of companies, check your roster. How many agents on your roster are over the age of 70, 75? How many agents on your roster do you think might be getting ready to retire? Have you wrapped your arms around them to help them understand the new way of selling business today? And or, if they are ready to retire, could you create a relationship or a connection and say, hey, when the time comes, you need to talk to this person because they're on the up and up and they're on the come up, and I think it'd be wise for you to put together some sort of merger. By the way, I think that the best, I know there's recommendations out there. Heck, there's even a book written on this, and I don't even know what that book says specifically, but I think the best language to use for my agents or team owners in the room, doesn't matter, this is anyone, the best language to use is you approach one of those agents, and I'd say, let's see, hey Jay, I'm not picking on you because you're one of the older ones in the front row, but I'm going to use you as a for instance. Hey Jay, let me ask you a question. If I could offer you, now I know your answer is going to be no, but just role play with me. If I could offer you a 50% referral fee on every single deal that takes place in your business for the next 5 years, would you be open to having a conversation and potentially merging with me? If I could offer you 50% of what you're currently making right now, and you don't have to be anything in the transaction. Now, we're going to have to create some videos together. You're going to have to send out some emails or some text messages saying, hey, you got to trust Jeff. You got to listen to what Jeff says. I've known Jeff for a long time. You're going to have to do some work, but you won't have to do anything in the transaction. Would you be willing to accept 50% of your income for the next 5 years in exchange for us working together in business? Okay, you'd be open to that. And by the way, would you be open to a total of a 10-year, a lifetime retirement plan, and I'll explain the rest on that in a second, a lifetime retirement plan. After the 5 years, the amount per year does decline, but I'd be open to offering you something for life. Would you be open to that conversation?
Absolutely.
Okay, Jay, so for the first 5 years, I'm going to offer you 50% of every deal that closes. And we're going to have a list of 12 things each year that we're going to do together. You're going to have to come to the client events. You're going to have to get on the phone with me sometimes. We're going to have to be in the videos. So you don't have to worry about dealing with the transactions. And for the first 5 years, I'm going to give you 50% of every single one of those commission checks. And in year 6, it is going to go down to 40%. In year 7, it's going to go down to 30%. In year 8, it's going to go down to 20%. And in year 9, it's going to be 10%. And from that point forward, it's going to be 10% for life on every single transaction that closes from your database that you have a connection with. Would you be open to that conversation? Of course. That is the dialogue that you should be having with top agents in your market and or agents that were top at one time that are trending downward. Because if you can offer them a retirement plan, okay, especially one that says, wait a minute, you're going to give me 50% of the income. Now, for those of you that are like, well, Jeff, you don't have to pay them that much. Maybe like 50% the first year. Yeah, but see, I'm thinking bigger picture. I'm thinking long term. If I tell Jay you're going to get 50% the first year, which some of you maybe have done that, and then in year 2 it goes down to 25%, and then in year 3 it goes down to 10%, which I know there's a lot of those deals that have been cut out there like that. Now Jay has no incentive to join me at the holiday party. Jay has no incentive to get on the phone for call nights when we're going to call everyone and wish them a happy Thanksgiving. He has no incentive to help me work the database. For 50% of the income, and you don't have to deal with any of the transactions, now he's got incentive every single month for the next 5 years. Because, by the way, this transition period of Jay handing over his business to me is not going to happen in a year or 2. It's going to take probably a good 3 to 5 years before those people trust me as much as they've trusted Jay. All right? Now, Jay, I'm not in Baltimore, but I would happily have this conversation with you if I was when the time is appropriate. All right? Thank you for being a good sport. Something that you should be considering. All right, let's go to the next one. In 2026, agents will continue to seek income from other revenue streams. We've already seen that a lot over the last 5 years. You know the smartest revenue stream for them is investing in real estate. So for my leaders, make sure you're always thinking about, talking about, getting involved in conversations with them about helping them become business people as well, not just real estate agents. Number 18. I hate this one. Or I'm on 18, so I'm sorry. Whatever number you're on. Forget that I even said 18. Okay? Number next. I hate this one, but it's true, and I want you to watch out for it in 2026. Present companies excluded, of course. Some brokerages are going to use fear around AI as a recruiting and retention tool. Pay attention and don't buy into whatever crap they're selling you. Because anytime there's a major change in the way business happens, it becomes an opportunity. Well, let's create this, let's create that, let's be the first to this. And then they create fear around whatever it is, and then they use it as a recruiting tool. So watch out for that. Next. I actually love this one. More traditional techniques, in other words, the traditional techniques will carry more weight with consumers in 26 than we've seen in the last several years. The traditional techniques will carry more weight with consumers. I wrote down things like door knocking, open houses, the good old-fashioned phone calls, handwritten letters. You know what's interesting is I've had so many agents, Jeff, what do you do about, your phone shows up as potential spam today, and, I don't think you can call like you used to, and, when you used to prospect, Jeff, you like probably prospected from like a landline, one of those phones with a cord on it. Today, things are a little different today, Jeff. Well, first of all, I get in the pit and prospect with you guys every time you want me to. Every January 1st, I live stream that. Justin Ford joined me this January as he does each and every January. And I prove to you that you can make contacts and generate leads and set appointments and do everything like we've always done. All right, so there's no such thing as phone prospecting is down or it's going away. We get the same results today as I did 10 years ago. But here's what I see happening. With less and less agents doing the traditional stuff, it actually makes the ones who do stand out. With less agents doing the traditional door knocking, with less agents doing the traditional phone calling, those that actually do it stand out. And here's an interesting thing to keep an eye on. I don't have any data behind this. This is just observation, being in the trenches with you. I actually believe as AI advances, the human stuff that we do will actually increase in value. Do you know how many people recently, when I go out door knocking or I do something with our agents as a call night or something like that, say, you know what, I know you probably don't get this a lot, Jeff, but I appreciate you being out here pounding the pavement. It's good to see that. You know, nowadays I get all these text messages from bots and all these other things. I have no idea who's real and who's not, but the fact that you're out knocking on doors tonight, that's pretty good. That's very impressive. And you know, we might not be ready to do anything right now, but if we were, you'd be our guy. The traditional stuff carries more weight today. Next, I wrote down, transaction volume won't save you in 2026. I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. Transaction volume won't save you in 2026. So what does that mean? Well, the agent who relied on volume will feel a little squeezed. More conversations are going to be required to get the same amount of deals done, and margins obviously are going to matter more as well. So, as you heard, in the markets that reached a peak in their values, and you saw in 25, a lot of markets across the US and Canada had a decline in values. And so, you can't expect that volume is going to be the savior. You have to understand that it might take more contacts. It might take more appointments. That's why anytime we're talking up here on stage, we're always looking at units first, volume second. Next, I wrote down in 26, I believe that buyers are going to expect a higher level of transparency than we've seen maybe in recent years. Buyers in 26 will be more educated and more skeptical because of that. Think about it. 2 years ago, a buyer could not go to ChatGPT and ask it questions. You understand the words that come out of your mouth now matter more than ever. Because before, you might be able to say something and it sounds good and it sounds cool and it sounds like it makes sense. But today, more than ever, they are fact-checking you. Because all it takes is for them to open up their ChatGPT app and ask the same question to make sure what you said was correct. So when you think about your language with consumers today, especially with buyers, buyers are more educated in 2026 and sellers. And because of that, they're going to be more skeptical. You have to know that. Super important for 2026. Next. Sellers are more interested in hiring risk managers, not just marketers. In 2026, sellers are more interested in hiring risk managers, not just marketers. In other words, they're not just going to be impressed by your fancy listing video, the buzzwords, your promises. No, instead, they expect you to talk to them things about pricing risk, timing trade-offs, timing the market correctly, net outcomes, pluses and minuses of doing something now versus waiting. A lot of you have already had experience with that because that's what we dealt with a lot of in 2025. I wrote down underneath this one, if you can't, this is very important, I want you to write this down, especially again because they have everything at their fingertips today. If you can't articulate the downside, you won't get the listing. If you can't articulate the downside, it's not just all pluses. We got to talk about the minuses and be able to articulate them. Next, I wrote down, marketing to the masses will be less effective in 2026. Marketing to the masses will be less effective in 2026. In other words, mass marketing will keep getting noisier and less effective. So what will be effective? Going local, going specific, going personalized. In other words, I wrote down underneath this one, I think this is probably the best takeaway under this one. Broad funnels. What's my home worth? Those are shrinking. They've already shrunk. They're going to shrink even more. So then what will matter most in 2026? Niche funnels. Not what's my home worth. How about 9 ways to get top dollar for my home this spring? How about 7 ways to get an offer accepted in a competitive lower interest rate market? Specific niches. We'll talk more about that the actual ad campaigns, how to use AI to help you with the ad campaigns. We're going to be talking a lot about that over the next, tomorrow specifically. So less generic advertising and more niche, more specific. Next, I wrote down, speed of follow-up still matters. Speed of follow-up still matters, but quantity, in other words, the frequency, speed of follow-up still matters, but quantity and quality will matter more in 2026. I wrote down underneath this, yes, speed still matters, but in 2026, what you say after they opt in matters more than how fast you say it. People are catching on. They know when it's a bot. They know when it's automated. I wrote down underneath this one, if it sounds automated, it'll be ignored. If it sounds automated, it'll be ignored. Over the next couple days, we're going to talk about some AI systems that we're using that don't sound automated. Speed to lead still matters. That's not going anywhere. Quantity, meaning the frequency of the follow-up. How often you follow up is just as important as what you say when you do follow up. It's got to be relevant. It's got to be personal. It's got to be useful. It sounds automated, forget it. Next, I wrote down, we need to shift from content to conversation. We need to shift our language and what we do as it relates to social media and video from just creating content. You got to create content. You got to create content. You got to create. No. I have to create content that creates conversations. You're not just creating content anymore. You're creating in other words, you should ask yourself the question, will this content create a conversation? Or ask it this way, what content could I create that would create conversations? We're going to move from posting to responding, from likes to dialogue. Agents winning in 26 will be the ones starting more real conversations online and off. Next, database quality will be more important in 26 than database size. When CRMs first came out, there was like this rush to get data. And once everyone kind of mastered CRMs, it became about the more people you have in your CRM, the more business you'll do. Not today. Because your automated text, your automated emails are not getting the results that you used to get with them. I know, because we experienced that too. I wrote down, big lists with no relationships will underperform. Smaller databases with clarity will dominate. Big lists with no relationship will underperform. Smaller databases with clarity will dominate. One thing that was awesome to see in 2025, I saw more of our agents do what I would consider micro events than I've seen in the history of our company. And I know there's going to be more of that in 26, and I know tomorrow when we get into database, I'm sure Taylor's going to share with us things that we did in 25 and things that we're planning to do in 26 as it relates to our database. But I mean, I don't even know what the total was. I think in total, you know, between our 32 full-time agents, I think we must have had like 30, 40, 50 little micro events that each one of them were holding on their own in addition to what we've done as a company. That's creating relationships with your database, not automation to just keep in front of them. 3 things we need to know as it relates under this point in 2026. We need to know who's buying, who's selling, and who's paying attention. Who's buying, who's selling, and who's watching. Who's paying attention to our stuff? Who's engaging with it? Those are the people that you need to get into deeper relationship with. Those are the people that you need to DM and say, hey, I noticed you had reacted to or responded to a few of my recent posts. I've got this event coming up. I know you haven't bought or sold a house with me, but I wanted to make sure you get an invite. We got to know who's buying, who's selling, and who's watching. Who's engaging with your stuff. Next, in 2026, clients will expect guidance, not just access anymore. We saw this in 25. That's kind of why I'm talking about it now. In other words, what I mean by this, access to listings is no longer the value. There was a day, right? Like, yep, we've got access to the MLS and I can get you listings right away every time. They have all the apps for that. They can get it just as fast as you can. So therefore, that doesn't actually carry as much weight as it used to a consumer. So then what does? Guidance. Guidance around if they should move, when they should move, and how to do it smart and safely. If they should move, when they should move, how to do it smart and safely. I wrote down, advisors will win, door openers will not. Next. The agent brand will matter, but not how you have maybe thought of it. The agent brand will matter in 2026, but maybe not how you thought of it. What do I mean by this? It doesn't mean fame and billboards and becoming famous in your market. It means consistent messaging and displaying a predictable experience. That's what consumers want today. They want to see that your messaging is consistent and the experience that they're going to get with you is predictable. In other words, people want to choose steady in this type of a market. People wanted steady in a market last year because of the uncertainty. They're still going to want steadiness in this market. So when I look at all of these predictions, and we're going to shift gears here in a second before we take our afternoon break. When I look at all of these different predictions, I kind of, as I was skimming them and thinking to myself, how could I kind of sum this all up? And here's how I sum it up in a couple sentences. The future of this business no longer belongs to the most aggressive agent. And I will tell you, that is something that actually bothers me a little bit because I've always been a very aggressive agent. I've always been able to take no for an answer. I've always been able to embrace the rejection. That has been my superpower, my level of aggressiveness and my ability to go out there and continue making contacts even when I've been told no. But even I have to evolve just like you do. So the future of this business doesn't belong to the most aggressive agent. It belongs to the agent who earns trust before asking for the commitment. It belongs to the agent who earns trust before asking for the commitment. And the most coachable one. Because when I look at all of these different predictions and solutions, we all have to be coachable. The future belongs to the most coachable agent in this room. The one who's willing to set aside maybe what they've heard or what they've done or what they've experienced and learn a new or updated way of doing it. The most coachable agents are the ones who are going to win next. Because have we seen a lot of change in our industry over the last 5 years? Say yes. Yes. So therefore, if we're still doing it the way we've been doing it, we cannot expect to get the result that we used to get. It worked for a while, and those days are numbered. Most coachable agents are going to be the ones who win next. And of course, I would like to apply for the job of coaching you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to shift gears for a second. I'm going to get into these notes, and I'll have to cover the rest of them tomorrow with you. I wrote down buyers versus sellers today. And this kind of is a perfect segue from predictions to what I'm seeing right now and what I believe we should be working. Over the last year, at all of these tour stops, I'd have agents come up to me and say things like, Jeff, I know we're covering sellers today, but I got to be real honest with you. Like, I kind of don't really want to work sellers anymore. Anybody have that? Be honest. Anyone have that thought over the last couple of years? Yes. I mean, you're raising your hands. If you're not raising your hand, you are liars, okay? I'm going to be real honest, Jeff. I'm not really excited to take another listing, and I know I'm here and the title is 13 Ways to Take More Listings or whatever the title was. But are you going to cover any buyer stuff today? To which I always respond with, I'm not covering any buyer-specific stuff, but what I teach you on the listing side will probably help you be a better buyer's agent. So I wrote down the benefits of being a great listing agent today and why I want everyone in 2026 to listen. I'm not suggesting you stop working with buyers by any means. I mean, I still probably work 14, 15 buyers a year myself, all right? And sometimes you have to. It's family, it's friends, it's sellers who also have to buy. So I'm not suggesting that you stop working buyers altogether. I'm just suggesting, like right now, if your business is like 50% buyer and 50% seller, I'm going to suggest that maybe you go 40% buyer and 60% seller, right? Or if you're already at 60-40, let's just bump it up 10%. Whatever number you're at, right? If 25% of your business was buyer business in 2025, let's bump that up to 35 or 40%. I'm not asking you to have an overnight shift in your business. But I am going to encourage you to start thinking more like a listing agent. Because if what I see on the landscape that's going to take place in 2026 is actually all going to come to fruition, the listing agents are still going to win more than the buyer's agents. So let me just remind you, in case you needed help with this one, the benefits of being a great listing agent. And underneath this, I want you to write down the employer versus the employee. Benefit number one, the employer versus the employee. Some of you have heard this story, and some of you, if you were at our event, the Live Unreal Summit, I think it was Orlando, Florida, when we started doing them in Florida, I shared from the stage how much time it takes to do a buyer transaction, how much time it takes to do a seller transaction. You guys remember drawing the line down the middle, and we wrote all the tasks, most of my front row, because they were there. Well, I've updated it. And not a whole lot has changed. But I want to share with you, when I got into this business, my very first broker, his name's Tim Riley, he's no longer with us. He said, Jeff, you need to make a decision right now. I said, what's that? He said, you need to make a decision that you're either going to be an employer or an employee in this business. I said, okay, well, what does that mean? Okay. Tim said to me, Jeff, here's the deal. He said the employers work their butts off Monday through Friday from 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning until 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, prospecting, going on appointments, making deals, taking listings, and putting listing inventory on the shelves for all the employees to spend their otherwise would-be time with family, friends, loved ones, holidays, out showing all the inventory of all the employers. So if you had to pick between one of the two, which one would you choose? I said, well, based on that, I want to be an employer. He said, okay, good. From this point forward, you're going to be a listing agent. I said, okay, great. And so as time went on, and one thing I discovered about being a listing agent for a buyer versus a buyer's agent is the amount of time it takes to transact business. And here's why when you go to conferences, the agents who focus on sellers, if they're at their top of their game, they're almost always 80, 90, 100 unit producers. Like the best of the best in most rooms I'm in are 80, 90, 100, 110 unit a year producers on the sell side. But then I go to a conference and I hear that these are the best buyer's agents in this state. These are the best buyer's agents in North America. And I find out they're doing 39 transactions, 42 transactions, 51 transactions. I always wondered why that is until I actually did the math myself. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to turn to a clean sheet of paper in your workbook. And I want you to draw a line right down the center. I need to show you something because there's a pretty good chance you don't know this. Because you're so busy working in the business, you don't stop to work on it. I wouldn't call it a superpower, I would just call it a discipline, but every week I stop on either a Saturday or a Sunday to work on the business. Thinking about what I can do to move the business forward versus just constantly working in it day in and day out. At the top, so you drew a line down the center, got it? So on the left-hand side, I won't have you write anything at the top yet, but on the left-hand side, okay, you're going to need the full page. So you need a clean sheet of paper. Flip as far as you have to get to a clean sheet. Don't do every other line. Do every line. You're going to need the entire page. On the left-hand side, I want you to write the word lead generation at the top. Not like the title, but just like the first line. Lead generation. And I want you to write the number 2 next to that. Beneath that, I want you to write lead FU for follow-up. Please, come on now. Lead follow-up. And I want you to write the number 1 next to that. Beneath that, I want you to write the word showing. And then the number 1. Beneath that, I want you to write the word buyer consult. And the number 1. Beneath that, I want you to write the word showings, and the number 2. Beneath that, I want you to write the word showings again, and the number 2. Beneath that, I want you to write the word offer consult, and the number 1. Beneath that, I want you to write the word offer admin, and the number 0.5. Beneath that word, I want you to write the word offer present, like present the offer present, and 0.5 next to that. Underneath that, I want you to write the word showings. Some of you guys are going to get that. The offer didn't get accepted. Okay, it's going to take you guys a second. I want you to write the word showings and the number 2 next to that. Underneath that, the word showings and the number 2 next to that. Underneath that, the word offer consult and the number 1 next to that. Okay, they found something. They want to write an offer. Great. Underneath that, offer admin. And 0.5 next to that. Offer present. And the number 0.5 next to that. Beneath that, I want you to write sale admin. Okay, we got the offer accepted and the number 1 next to that. Sale admin. Beneath that, I want you to write the word inspection. And the number 3 after that. Beneath that, I want you to write the word showings. What? Hey, I can't help that they didn't like the way the doorbell chimed. Get your butt back out there and start showing them more homes. Showings, and the number 2 next to that. Then offer admin, because they're done and you're done. One time out, they picked something, offer admin, 0.5 next to that. Offer present, 0.5 next to that. Sale admin, the number 1 next to that. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Beneath that, the word inspection and the number 3 next to that, assuming you intend your inspections. Beneath that, sale admin, 0.5. Sale admin, in other words, sale administration, 0.5. Appraisal admin, 0.5, coordinating the appraisal. Maybe we got to renegotiate the appraisal, whatever. Okay, we're in the home stretch. Lender and title admin, and the number 2 next to that. Underneath that, I want you to write the word walkthrough. And put a number 1 next to that. And underneath walkthrough, the word closing. Thank God. Finally. And the number 2 next to that. I know, thought we were going back to showings? Maybe. Total all that up. My high C's, you've probably already been doing the calculator to the right while you've been doing this. How many hours is that? 34. I already did the math for you. 34. On the right-hand side of the line, go back up to the top. Write the word lead generation, the number 2. Beneath that, lead FU, the number 1. Beneath that, pre-qualify with a 0.5. Pre-qualify, in other words, calling the sellers to pre-qualify the appointment, 0.5. Well, Jeff, does it take a half hour? There might be some phone tag in there. Pre-appointment routine, 0.5. Preparing for the appointment. Underneath that, pre-appointment package, 0.5. Underneath that, appointment and the number 1. appointment, and the number 1. Underneath that, follow-up, and the number 0.5. Underneath that, listing paperwork, and a 0.5. Listing paperwork, 0.5. Underneath that, listing admin, and the number 1. By the way, these are based on today's numbers. This is not based on 10 years ago when I originally did this, or 5 years ago, whenever that was. Listing paperwork, 0.5. Listing admin, the number 1. Listing marketing, 2.5. 2.5 spent getting the marketing together for the listing, creating reels, stories, talking points, whatever. 2.5. Next, price reductions in the number 1. You get a listing today, it doesn't sell, you're going to have at least a half hour to an hour of conversations with the seller about getting a price reduction. Offer presentation, 0.5, because once we get the reduction, we'll probably get an offer. Offer presentation, 0.5. Offer admin, 0.5. Offer admin, 0.5. Negotiations, because now we have a sale. Because as a listing agent, you have the property that's in demand. There's no, every now and again a deal falls apart, you put it back on the market, you just resell it if you price it right. Negotiations, so sale negotiations, the number 1. Inspection negotiations beneath that, and the number 1. Sale administration or sale admin, and the number 2. Sale administration, and the number 2. And then closing, and the number 2. Total all that up, that's 18 hours. In 2025, the average buyer transaction took 34 hours versus the average seller transaction took 18. Now, I know some are less, some are more. This is an average. So when you look at that alone, in the same amount of time, you can do nearly double the transactions. That in itself is reason alone to maybe consider focusing on the seller side a little bit more in 2026.